Okay, so now that he's positioned, I'm going to go ahead and delete, or actually not delete, but just close that one out. So I've got New York skyline, I've got the man, he's cut out nicely. Size, I've got his torso here, eyes are right about there, and that looks good. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to grab the bird because we're going to put wings on him. So we're going to do open, but we need to mask the wings out. So what we're going to do first is grab that bird. Now, this file is also a large file. This is going to give us better control. It's better to take something that's a large file and shrink it down than to take a low quality image and try to make it bigger. It's not going to work as well. All right, so with this, what I want to do again is I'm going to mask out this bird. So I'm going to try the object selection first. That's my preferred, just to see especially with Photoshop, it's gotten so much more powerful. The Photo P one's pretty decent as far as being able to have it automatically find edges, but it does take some time because it is running through the browser. So with this, the image analysis is still going on. The larger the image, the more it does. Now, see, that didn't do a very good job. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to hold the box down and highlight over this. And that's actually not bad. Let's take a look and see. It did mess up some edges. So this is a more common thing that you're going to need to do to clean this one up. So this one's going to take a little bit of time. You notice it didn't get the edges there. It's missing pieces of the wing. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect in this selection because we are going to fade it into the background. But let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and I'll show you what I would do to clean this up. Once again, I'm going to switch and select my lasso, and I'm going to do this in smaller pieces. So I'm going to start to drag, and I'm just going to cut around inside of the image here and come back to basically where I started. Whoops, I forgot one key thing. Forgot to hold down the shift key. Even after years of using this, I still end up forgetting because I'm trying to go through it too quick. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going around. Whoops, went too far. That's okay. I'm going to zoom in. I can hold down the Alt key to subtract. So that got rid of that one. Now I'm going to move over here. I just use the space bar and use my mouse to click that over. Now I'm going to press the Shift key, Shift adds. I'm going to go a little ways and kind of cut back in and go back to where I started. Kind of messed up there, so I'm going to press the Alt key and go to the outside. So I'm subtracting that edge. So really what I'm focusing on is getting this outside portion to be included in the selection because I missed that part. And we can always go back in and make other little adjustments once we move it over. But what I'm doing is just taking the time now to clean up the edge, holding the space bar down, clicking with my mouse, seeing that that didn't catch this edge. So I'm going to clean this up. You may have to do it in smaller pieces, especially if you don't have a mouse. And that's okay. You can do this little edge. And like I mentioned, again, if you go too far out, just press the Alt key instead of the Shift key. And this time, go outside instead of inside. And that will get rid of what you don't want. Gonna just move around. That's okay. That's looking good. Moving down here. I'm okay with it not getting the fringes of this yellow, but this part right here, it's probably not going to be noticeable, but I'd rather include it down here. I'm not sure what's happening there, so I'm going to include some of that. Going to kind of round these off. The eye will be much more forgiving once we get it into the main image. Whoops. Control Z. Don't know why it's grabbing that green. I don't want that green, so I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to press the Alt key. That was a really choppy, crummy job there. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key. Add that part in. So see what it did is it trimmed that out. I want to get rid of this part. So that's the Alt. All right, good enough. That's looking pretty good. I don't really like how choppy that is, but whatever. We'll leave that as it is. I'm going to hold down the shift key, clean up this edge. Yours may not be exactly the same as mine, but I'm just talking you through the basic process. Shift to add, Alt to subtract. Doesn't have to be the entire thing. Whoops, that happens. I press the Alt instead of Shift. Shift and add that portion. I'm going to Alt and subtract that green. The green is going to be noticeable when I move it over into the other image. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, grab all those pieces. Whoops. Got to really pay attention to when you let go of the Shift or the Alt. This little bit of time that you're doing now to fix this is going to make the selection so much better. It's looking good. Moving along here. See, it missed these edges, but I'm not too worried about those because that white edge is going to make it look like it's glowing, and I don't really want that. So even though the image that is technically part of his wings, I'm not going to want to include that, but I do want to include this part. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key. Coming inside there. Going to hold down the Shift key. Not worried about getting every single bit of that white because I know that white edge is going to make it look like it's glowing. But right there, whoops, don't want all of that green. I'm trying to avoid keeping the green. But I want to get those portions because I don't want to make it look like there's holes in the wing. All right, so that looks good. Looks good, and now I'm back to the beginning. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to click on the mask, and I'm going to drag this entire layer over to the New York Angel. And now you'll see it's pretty big. I'm going to move this over. Right now it's blocking him completely. I'm going to resize this, so I'm going to Control minus to zoom out. I'm going to press that a few times. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and start to shrink. I want to keep the wings proportional. I also want to rotate this so it looks like it's actually attached to his back. Since he's got his shoulders at an angle, I'm going to want to have the wings at an angle as well. I'm going to also shrink those down just a little bit more. Just holding down the Shift key. I'm actually holding the Shift and the Alt, so it's changing size based on the center. And now it's kind of funky because I can't really tell where I want to put him based on the shoulders because it's in front of him. So what I'm going to do is this. I am going to move that layer underneath. So now the wings are underneath him. I don't have to worry about masking out his body. So I'm going to move over here. I'm going to switch back, not to the mask, but I'm going to switch to the actual thumbnail. I'm going to move this around. I'm going to switch back. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see this bounding box, and I'm just going to kind of turn these at an angle. One of the things I was noticing is the tail is kind of showing up there. Not a big deal because we can always adjust that later. But right now, I'd like to move these up a little bit. And I just hit Control T because that's the keyboard shortcut in Photoshop. But since we're running this on a browser, it's actually opening up a brand new tab, which is super annoying, and it happens to me every single time I'm using this. So I'm making these bigger. You'll notice what I'm trying to do is get it so that I've got the tips of the wings are not outside of the side of the image, and that this is up high enough about where his eyes are. The reason for that is I'm going to put some text behind here, and I want to have the wings to be able to kind of fold in front of and behind the text if necessary. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do on this part of the tutorial is I'm going to rename this one. I'm just going to call that Wings. In the next video, we will go in and start to add in some other photos, and then we'll start to play around with the colors, and we'll do some cool drawing effects.